Welcome everybody. Tim Thiesen Live, broadcasting from the palatial studios of Central Valley Talk here in the Tower District of Fresno. Welcome one and all. It's still a very hot late summer day in the valley, and but harvest time the fall harvest is full underway, and we're still struggling with a lot of issues with drought. But we are a tough and resilient people here, and the Fresno area in the Central Valley we will survive, although it's tough, but there's always a lot of complications in life. This program is all about hope, growth, and prosperity. Any direction our government takes us other than that is always the wrong direction, and knowledge is what empowers us to make great decisions each and every day of our life. Today's program is brought to you by the National Federation of Independent Business, the voice of small business, Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse, Horn Photo in Fresno, and for your real estate needs, it's www.timthiesen.com. We have a great show lined up for you today. We're going to go right to our first guest. It's Mark Edwards. He's a probate attorney and a state attorney practicing in the Fresno Central Valley area. And Mark, thanks for coming on today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tim. Good to be here again.
And so we'll kind of do, Mark, let's start with some of the basics of conservatorships and all that, because with probate and conservatorships there's always a lot of confusion, and so just kind of bring our viewers up to speed on where they need to start when they're faced with these situations.
Yeah, and you said that information is power, and so I try to empower clients and the general public about probate matters, and a huge one for people is conservatorship exposure. And so I should start by talking about what a conservatorship is. Generally, if you do not nominate a conservator as an adult, then you stand the chance of becoming conserved. In other words, we're not usually thinking about what happens to or worrying about what happens to my stuff when I die, because we think we're going to have a will, or we get a will in place, or a trust. But a lot of people aren't thinking what happens if I live, but I'm all of a sudden incapacitated. And a recent study by the some federal bureau, I did a study. I have a blog on my website on this. There's an increased rate of automobile accidents attributable to cell phone use. And I thought for sure, well, the statistics are going to say texting. People are texting, and so they're in wrecks. No, the statistics are actually there's increased wrecks attributable to cell phones from just talking on the phone. Not as much as texting, though texting is a factor. And my point is this: the auto accident rate is increased because we're on our phones. We're doing distracted driving. That's probably another issue for somebody else. A whole show for another day.
We could do an hour on that.
Yeah, but you can easily become incapacitated during a wreck. I have to, admit the truth. I've blown a stoplight before because I was too deep in a conversation on my phone. I hope it never happens again. But by the grace of God, it wasn't my time. My number wasn't up. But I easily could have been in a wreck and become incapacitated. And so the moment you become incapacitated, that's when all the problems start, because you're the one that has the right to make your own decisions. But what happens when you can't? Well, the root word kicks in, and the root word is to be conserved. And the probate code deals with all of this. So in other words, there are two main issues that need to happen. Your physical well-being needs to be conserved, and your financial well-being needs to be conserved. And so the probate code calls that a conservatorship of the estate and a conservatorship of the person.
Okay.
So that's generally what a conservatorship is.
So there's within that conservatorship, then there is two categories. So for the person, and then the person's assets and financial means.
Correct, and it's the conservatorship of the estate that causes a little bit more of a problem in terms of cash flow. There is a picture I sent in. I don't know if we can bring that up now or if we want to bring it up later, but you can see that this is Fresno County local rules, page 182, and the probate rules. You can see just to establish a conservatorship, the court has said it's justifiable for there to be a $2,500 fee for the conservatorship attorney, or the attorney that's representing the conservators. So you can see there's a pretty high cost. Now generally most attorneys are probably going to charge more than that because there's more time involved in establishing a conservatorship. So it's a high cost to pay by not nominating your conservators ahead of time or opting out of the conservatorship process altogether. So that brings me to my next point. How can you avoid conservatorship or being conserved? And I don't know if you want me to talk about that. Just keep rolling.
Sure. Let's just go ahead and roll right in
Okay.
there. How to avoid what can we, because this is all about information, and what can you do to prevent these situations that become very complicated?
Right. So the probate code generally allows you to do two things to get out of having a conservatorship. One, you can establish a financial power of attorney. A financial power of attorney should be carefully drafted to set forth an agent or someone that is known as an attorney in fact. That person is tasked with making financial decisions for you if you're incapacitated. Now you can do one of two things. If you don't completely trust your agent, you can sign it and say, this is called a springing financial power of attorney. In other words, you sign it today, but it's not effective today. It's only effective until you're incapacitated. Or you could have what's called a non-springing power of attorney that says, basically, whether I'm incapacitated or not, this person can make these financial decisions. The nice thing about that is there's a lot of things that have to be done for people, like filing tax returns. Maybe there's an investment decision that needs to be made. Maybe they're earning a low rate of return on one investment and they want to shut it down and move it somewhere else. Well, if you don't have an agent under a financial power of attorney, nobody can do that. And so off to court you go for a conservatorship proceeding. So that financial power of attorney will give your attorney in fact the ability to make those decisions regarding your assets. The other thing that you can do is form an advanced healthcare directive. We used to call them powers of attorney for healthcare, but they've changed the name. And that document is particular to establish an attorney in fact or an agent to make your healthcare decisions. Again, so if you're incapacitated, it could be springing or non-springing advanced directive. And if it's non-springing, then your agent essentially has the immediate ability to make healthcare decisions for you. So if you become incapacitated, they can just keep rolling.
Okay. So, like a case in point, then you could do a springing financial power of attorney to say a spouse.
Correct.
And then, but maybe at the same time to start closing the loops here, that then the spouse has a springing one, and it goes both ways to whoever is going to be named as the executive of your estate, right?
Hopefully you have a good enough relationship with your wife so that you can have we would call reciprocating powers of attorney. Kind of can get a little awkward when the husband says, I nominate my wife, and the wife says, no, I'm not nominating you, husband. I'm going to nominate the CPA.
You've been a bum all your life.
But, that can happen.
Right.
But, yes, you essentially, in a married context, you usually will nominate each other. And then, importantly, you have a list of successors. And then, also importantly, as a backup, because as an estate attorney, I like to take a belts and suspenders approach. So in the financial power of attorney, you nominate a conservator. That way you've settled, if for some reason the power of attorney was invalidated for any reason, or there was a power that was not included, and there was a decision that needed to be made, you could have a limited conservatorship, and now you've nominated who you want as a conservator, and most importantly, you waived bond. And bond is a big issue, because if you don't waive bond ahead of time for your conservator, then in some situations you're not going to be able to get out of the bond posting unless you have a pretty small estate and most of the cash can be put in a blocked account. Blocked accounts are bad because the court's involved on every time money needs to come out of the blocked account, which, there's more attorney's fees. That's great for me,
right,
but not so great for the estate. And also, just the bonding cost itself. Usually it's a necessary expense of administration, so that comes out of the estate. So your financial power of attorney should do those two major things: establish an agent, successor agents, and you should have a nomination of conservators and waive your bond, unless there's some compelling reason for you to not waive bond. But
okay, I think I'm going to have to make an appointment to come see you, because I've got a lot of the holes filled, but there's a couple that are still open.
Well, you're like most Americans. In fact, unfortunately, most Americans don't have a will in place or a trust. And I look at it as insurance. We will spend money every month on life insurance, term life insurance, or auto insurance that we may never use, but we pay it all the time. The actuaries and the risk analysis gurus at the insurance companies, they know that they're going to make money because there's a certain amount of people that are going to pay premium and they're never going to pay out on the policy.
Right.
However, I can guarantee you today that 10 out of 10 people watching this program will either become incapacitated or die. So, with that being the case, you would think, estate planning is fairly inexpensive risk insurance to cover something that's actually a known risk that will happen to you. And a little bit of money ahead of time is going to save your heirs money, time, and grief in the long run. Whereas you make that check to your insurance company, I'm not, nothing negative about insurance. Right. We need to have insurance.
They're important tools.
But, that may be something that you pay out your whole life and never use.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's, because we have a lot of things in place already. But conservatorships, I'm glad I had you on today because we're learning something there. Because it's getting extremely tricky also, all these court cases now on health care directives and everything else. And it gets extremely complicated. And folks, you need to sit down and have those frank conversations with your family and with your attorney and get the stuff in place, because down the road it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when it's going to happen.
Right. And you I suppose could take matters into your own hands, but again, I challenge the wisdom of that. There's a lot of things that I don't do because I'm not a subject matter expert on those. I don't do my own health care. I don't perform, medical procedures on myself. I have no clue. I don't fix my own air conditioning unit. I hire someone to come out and do it. So we all understand the value of hiring somebody that is a professional or has a lot of experience to handle certain matters of our life. But, I guess it's just maybe people there's this, I hate attorneys, and there's a lot of, I have to admit, of course, there are a lot of, really bad actors out there that make the profession look bad. But don't let that characterize your whole view of all attorneys. Generally speaking, there's a lot of us that are in the business to help people, help raise awareness, and help protect our clients.
Well, and the other side of the coin is sooner or later, either you plan, or if you don't plan, the attorneys all show up anyway.
Yeah, and
and then your kids have to deal with it.
I kind of chuckle too, because some of the people that will go out and form their own documents, they're probably going to some of these major vendors online, and if you really think about it, who more than likely created those entities?
That is correct.
They're probably a bunch of attorneys.
Yes.
So one way or the other, you're paying attorneys. Yeah. So, one of the nice things about my service, online service, is that you're having an attorney with you every step of the way. And, I'm trying to save you a few extra dimes and pennies, and maybe even more than that with my online service.
Okay. Very good, Mark. Thanks for coming in. I think we need to go deeper into this, so we'll plan on having you in next month.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, folks, we're going to be right back after these messages.